Hi, I'm Scott. I'm a Quiet Place fan.
Hi, I'm Senthil, and I'm a Bird Box fan.
So the two of us have decided since we disagree, we're going to start watching as many horror movies as we can and come up with a new way of rate them. Come join us.
But I kill your ass! And my vape's dead. Perfect night.
You want to be sheriff? How about we start acting like one?
Simple, you sent me Wolf of Snow Hollow for review this week,
Yeah.
and I had the opportunity to sit down and watch it. Now, what I will say is that based on our scoring on this movie, I was not a huge fan of this. So I'm basically putting this over into a bird box for me. And the reason is I didn't see any hidden meanings or symbols in this. That I thought the soundtrack was not good. It didn't lead me anywhere. And frankly, what was discouraging, I actually thought at the beginning of this movie that it had a unique premise for a werewolf film, which was basically, and I don't want to give it away for the viewers, but this creature was taking bizarre body parts, right? So it was taking these bizarre body parts, and I went, "Whoa, what the hell's going on here?" Right? But it wasn't violent. It wasn't gory. It felt more like raspberry syrup over the snow, and it lost itself after that. And I think it was supposed to be, if I'm not wrong, if I'm wrong, correct me on this, but it was supposed to be a horror comedy. I never laughed. There was nothing funny in it. And what they would do is they would like change the tone of the music to try to get you kind of like a laugh track to laugh. So for me, I just was not into the film. I watched it. I didn't laugh, and the ending, I still sit here going, what the heck just happened? But what was your take on it?
I found it interesting that you thought it was a comedy because when I first saw it, I saw it twice. When I first saw it, I thought it was a comedy too, and the main character just aggravated me to no end. But on second viewing, I it was my conclusion that this was not intended to be a comedy, and that we were seeing a character basically fall apart in front of us in live time. And so my second viewing through that was, and which is why I was less aggravated at the second viewing, because I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to be laughing, and that this really wasn't a horror movie. It was a character study, is what my perception was. And then, it came to the conclusion that all of the horror elements were secondary to the character study that was going on. I don't know that they successfully pulled it off. So it led me to aggravation points about, as I scored it, I thought characters were required to do, in some cases, ridiculous and stupid things in order to make the plot move. I didn't find the music all that compelling. The gore was secondary, which is kind of an odd thing in a horror movie. And I don't feel that they spent enough time really on some of the unique what this could have been a great horror movie, and what made it unique about how the murders happened, how they showed the gore, the nature of the murders, none of which was explained, and just left. So yeah, I saw it as a different type of movie than you did.
So, okay, so this is where I was curious, and I had to ask you a question, is because you've watched it twice, and you and I have talked about horror in the past, and it's rare that I go back and I'll watch another horror film, right? Especially one that, I've gone back and watched Nightmare on Elm Street and the Conjuring ones, but if it doesn't have something enticing, so I'm curious, what drew you to going in for a second viewing of this movie?
Two elements. I was also fascinated by the unique nature of the murders that the movie. And I thought maybe I missed something because I didn't see any answers. So I thought maybe I missed something. And then the character, I thought the main character, the sheriff's performance, was really good. But the interpretation of it is a direction problem, because I also thought it was a comedy initially. So when I went back, I thought if you put it in the right context, I thought his performance was really good. And so that's why the character, I want to understand better why the character was going through what he was going through. And I thought maybe I missed something about the nature of the murders, and not a whole lot's explained, which is unfortunate. So to me, this was closer to A Quiet Place than a Bird Box because it made no sense.
So, okay. So another question for you is, by the end of the film, I was thinking, if they had really played the ending like I thought they should have, once you find out who and what, right? Because there's no hints throughout the entire film. It's not like,
not at all.
Butler did it, right? It's just like suddenly here it is. But if they had played that part into what this person did for a living, and then you took the weirdness of the body parts that they were taking, and you saw something different, I would have had a surprise, and I probably would have thought differently from the film. I just was left with nothing. And so it was fascinating to me that at the end, I just went, why?
It definitely comes out of left field, and maybe that's a giveaway for the audience. There's no reasonable explanation for the ending. I kind of associated this with our conversations on Stephen King, a really great concept, and not knowing how to close the door on the story, and just making up an ending to finish the movie.
I would tend to agree. So with that being said, you and I both, I think we're disagreeing, or are we agreeing on Wolf of Snow Hollow? Because I definitely think it's a Bird Box. It's not something I'd go back and watch again, but I just heard you call it A Quiet Place, so which you're not a Quiet Place fan. So are we both in agreement that the Wolf of Snow Hollow doesn't meet our criteria?
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that while we disagree on whether it's a comedy, intended to be a comedy or not, I think we both effectively score the movie and found the same elements to dislike or like in it. However, I don't know that it answers our primary question in how to tell good, what's good, Quiet Place versus Bird Box. We both thought it wasn't great, but we chose the movie to correlate it to that we don't like, which is Quiet Place for me. I thought Quiet Place made no sense and had a lot of elements that didn't make any sense, reminded me of this movie, great concepts that weren't executed, and ultimately wasn't entertaining because of that. And you think something is similar and call it a Bird Box.
I think the similar Bird Box, everything you just said, I think the similar thing of Bird Box. So I actually think we both agree that the Wolf of Snow Hollow is probably one that, look, if you've got a little time to waste, you can go in and take a watch of it. You can also go over to our website, offlawn.org, and see our scores for this as well when you get a chance. Is that correct, Simple?
Yeah, absolutely. And as the readers watch the movie and look at our scores, I would love some comments on, if the audience agreed with how we scored it. As we've talked about, our approach in looking at movies is intended to be non-traditional, in that we need to find a way to objectively find elements that our audience may or may not like about it, and then make up their own mind about whether they want to watch it and whether they enjoyed watching it. And so in that context, when you scored it, did you find that our scoring criteria helped to demonstrate your viewpoints about the movie?
I think it does help. Again, we're trying something unusual here. We're not using tomatoes. We're not using star values. We're using a score sheet that basically goes through and bases it not on character or, it's kind of going a little deeper into the movie and trying to get to the bottom of what horror is, which to me, Senthil, leads to Bloodfest. And if I'm not mistaken, when I was looking at your review, it almost matched exactly mine. So give me your take on Bloodfest.
There were some real comedic elements to Bloodfest. And So it's interesting because while the last movie neither one of us were really sure that it was intended to be a comedy. This is clearly intended to have comedy elements, and they pulled it off in many areas. The dialogue I thought was great, and I thought it was so well done for a low budget movie that it's something I thought Blumhouse should have picked up, and if it had been in the theaters and picked up at Blumhouse, this would have been a big hit. They do a lot with the sets and the effects, the practical effects. There's a lot of gore in there, and the gore fits into the context of the movie. It's not gore just for its own sake. Yes. The soundtrack it didn't particularly grab me. I could have, but it didn't detract from the movie either. And there were there's still elements in there that I didn't like. But it avoided many of the traditional horror tropes. Like, for example, it didn't really require the main character to do stupid things in order to make the plot work. And the story was unique. And at the end of the day, I thought it dragged a little bit. So I was a little bored in some areas that it could have been a little bit tighter in pacing. I probably could have knocked out a couple of Candy Crush levels. But overall, this was, to me, entertaining. So I called it a Bird Box type movie. So
total agreement with you, Synthel. And I actually put it in a Quiet Place category. It's actually one of the movies I would go back and I would watch it again. If I was looking for something to do and I needed a good horror film to go to, I would go back and watch Bloodfest. And for the same reasons you were just talking about, the gore was good. It wasn't so over the top, right? But it was unexpected, right? There's certain scenes you're going, what the hell just happened, right? And like you, I wasn't a big into the soundtrack. It didn't really play into it and everything else like that. But what I loved about Bloodfest, Synthel, was that they took you on a journey through horror. And it was, and I don't want to give a whole lot away, but I mean, it was probably every genre of horror you can think of. And it reminded me of Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even the ending has this really great, it's a phenomenal ending that when you're sitting there watching, you go, yeah, that was good.
I want to see a sequel. Yeah.
I would love to see a sequel. I'm with you. The whole gypsy scene is probably one of the ones that I can't stop laughing at. Every time I think about it, I'm laughing so hard at the gypsy scene. But I agree with you. I totally found Bloodfest one of those horror movies. I don't think anybody who watches it who truly appreciates horror is going to be upset with. And for that reason, just like you, were there a couple of scenes where I could have gone in and Candy Crushed? I could have, but they were so short that it didn't give me enough time to do anything, right? I was focused on the movie and I loved it. It wasn't Eli Roth gross out. It was just right all the way through the film,
Did you find that this was intended to be a parody?
I totally found it to be a parody. Now, I don't know if they meant to do that. Certainly felt like it to me.
Yeah, I didn't think it was over the top parody, which is a real plus. And like you said, it's a very unique movie in the sense that it takes advantage of all the different types of horror movies that we're all really familiar with. And the reason while we're both found entertaining, it was closer to a Bird Box than a Quiet Place for me because, it didn't aggravate me as much as Quiet Place did in terms of things that made no sense and characters that were taking actions and making decisions that made no sense. This didn't have as much of that for me. And for that reason, it was closer to a Bird Box because Bird Box didn't aggravate me as much as Quiet Place did. I think that's what it comes down to, which type of movie do we find more aggravating? The dialogue in this, as I mentioned earlier, reminded me of Kevin Smith type of movies. The line about 28 Days Later being a health documentary.
Yes.
I've never heard of put it that way. I thought, he's totally right.
I will tell you again, the dialogue was good. The characters were really good. I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed the film. It's one of those ones. I think both of us agree. I put it in a quiet place. You put it in a bird box, which means we both agree that the film is enjoyable. So
I think there's just some criteria that we should probably add to our score sheet by looking at this. And after I saw the movie, I went and looked up the actors. I went and looked up the writer and director, who was the same. And I wanted to know what else have they been in. I wanted to see what else the director had done and written, because it was so, entertaining. And I was disappointed that I didn't see a whole lot. They're all fairly novice actors who did a great job in their performances. The director did a great job. The production value was so good. It made me wonder if there really is a theme park out there, like the set. I wanted to go research the movie. It caught my attention in that way.
So again, I want to remind all of our watchers, you can go to www.offlawn.org, grab our scores. It also gives a very brief, we don't give too much of the movies away, right? Because we're not sitting here trying to give away what the movies are about. We're just trying to tell you whether it's worth watching or not. So you can go in there. Also on our website, it gives you why we feel the way we do about our Quiet Place picks and our Bird Box picks. And it allows you to kind of get to know us a little bit better inside there. So for next week, Senthil, I've assigned you a movie that I enjoyed. I'm going to be disappointed if you don't like it. It's called Psycho Gorman, and it is a horror comedy that I watched, believe it or not, with my wife and daughter. All three of us laughed and we loved it. What are you assigning to me next week?
Before we get to that, I saw Psycho Gorman already, and so I'm looking forward to talking about it and comparing notes. The movie that I assigned to you is A Wrong Turn, the 2021 version of Wrong Turn.
Is this a remake? Because I remember seeing A Wrong Turn earlier, in earlier 2000s. Is this a remake?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. I will let you answer that. It has the same title. And so when I first saw it, I thought it was intended to be a remake, and it is a remake of sorts. But the viewer is going to have to decide how much of a remake it really is. And so I'd be interested in see what your feedback is. I won't tell you what I thought of the movie. Like you and I both do, I tend to find any horror movie that looks interesting and start watching it. And that's how I've actually never heard of Psycho Gorman. I wish I had, because it's unique.
Give it away, damn it.
Yeah, I won't say anything other than the fact that, I'm surprised it hasn't been promoted better. Wrong Turn 2, it's a new movie. And that may be a factor of COVID, that they're not getting the kind of promotion that that you would expect to see. So,
agreed. All right, Senthil, until next week, then we'll see you later. Take care.
See you later. I'll look forward to hearing your comments.
All right.